This is the Irish Maker Podcast, a show we talk to makers, crafters, and builders from all over the island of Ireland. I'm your host, Nathan Wheeler, and let's jump right into the episode. Olga, how are you?
I'm great. A bit hot here, but...
It's super hot here. We're
Yes.
here in the Tog Makerspace out in the Calmore Road, and it's like a veritable oven in here. It's like so hot outside.
Yeah, it's still hotter in Ukraine right now, so, I can't really complain.
How hot is it?
I think it's like 30-something, 34 right now in Ukraine.
That's too hot.
That's how we live,
I couldn't do that. I actually melt. Like, I melt at anything hotter than
Yeah.
about 20 degrees.
Yeah, I don't like very hot weather as well, but, at least it's like nice to get this like for a change, because again, we have really cold winters as well.
Oh,
so.
yeah. I always find it's like so much easier to do the cold than it is the warm, because like you can put like clothes on, but you can't take your skin off. Like when it's super
Yeah.
hot. And
But
also-
cosplays as well, it's like the thing where, especially if you do like some harder, like, armor or like layered costumes, I would prefer to do that in winter, because again, for example, like my Garrus costume that we're probably gonna talk about in a minute, but it's so hot wearing this thing. Like, we actually had to put in 2 fans that would kind of like, circulate some air, because otherwise, like it's not summertime costume. It's not like.
No. And all the good cons are in the summer.
Yes, like.
It's not designed very. Because I know when I was going around Dublin Comic Con, I was in my enormous tech priest and that, and I have to have someone with me. There's a really nice guy called Sean. He was helping me out, and he kind of followed me around with water, and then told people to kind of back off when they got a bit too close. And then every like 10, 15 minutes, he'd be like, "Are you okay?" And I'd be like, "Water." And then he'd just kind of be like, "Do you want to take a little bit or a glug? Because I can't move my hands." I'm just like, "A glug." And he's just like, "Whoom." And I'm there like, sweet nectar of the gods. And I'm like knocking it back. And then I'd be like, "Thanks." And he'd be like, "You okay?" And I'd be like, yes. You
Much
having
better.
fun?" And then I'd go off again. And then I'd come back and I'd be like, "More water, please."
Yeah,
And then once the
yeah.
water runs out, we're kind of like, that's it. And I kind of nearly pass out. Olga, you are a cosplayer, like myself. And you've been cosplaying for a few years. People might know you
Yeah.
online on your Instagram, Oliver Chest. You've got, I think it's over 2,000 followers on that. And you've produced some pretty amazing cosplays over the last couple of years.
I just do whatever I want. Like, basically, it's not like I try to best someone. For me, it's just like a hobby, just a type of activity I can do to ease tension, like relax a bit. And honestly, again, for example, even the Garrus costume, it took me almost 3 years to make it,
3 years.
Yeah, but again, like, it wasn't like I planned to do this specific costume for some specific event, right? And I didn't have a certain plan. I just knew I want to make this character, and I want to make it as, lifelike as possible. That being an alien and...
So tell us, before we get into the intricacies of your Garrus costume, I only wish we had it here and we could really, really talk about it, but we can bring up some pictures in a moment.
Yeah.
How did you get into cosplay?
Like, when I first got into like cosplay-ish stuff, I didn't actually know that cosplay was a thing, because I used to play video games since my early childhood. Like, basically, my father would just sit me on his lap and we would, shoot some guys in Call of Duty. So yeah, that was a great time, great childhood. But yeah, as time progressed, I learned about more games. Especially for me, I think the one game that kind of like was the one that would define that I would actually like want to make this stuff in real life, I think it was Skyrim, because back then I never saw anything like that before. Like, I never experienced any like kind of this fictional world that would have so much detail, and that would be so different from the reality, So yeah, at a certain point I kind of just thought about, oh yeah, it's nice, like I would like to make maybe a pendant, because there is like a lot of pendants in the game. And I tried to, sculpt it. It worked out. Like, everybody told me that it was amazing, And it wasn't something very like intricate. It wasn't something very, complex. But at that point, I was like, okay, so I can do this thing. What else can I do? And that's when I actually found out that people do that, you know, that they do some like costumes, that they do some basically like replicas of weapons as well. So I tried to, I think, yeah, the first sword I tried to make, it was like the steel sword from Skyrim.
That's a beautiful model, like simple, but it's nice.
Yes, it's just like it looks very nice, and it doesn't require too much from you. And again, at that point, I didn't know anything about cosplay. I just knew that, okay, this is the thing that exists, right? And I didn't look up any tutorials. I just tried to make it work with the materials I, you know, kind of could find, right? So it wasn't like even EVA foam. It was like basically a paper model, and I would cover it with like a wood filament or something, and I would sand it and that kind of stuff. But at that point, I think it was like 2015 or something, I figured out, okay, so there are actually conventions, there are actually like, you know, events that are for people like me, for people who like pop culture, who like games, films, whatever. So I went there, and there I saw actual cosplayers, and I was amazed because, you know, like, it's so cool when you see a character from a video game in real life. Like, well, you know, it's just a person, you know, who made this costume, but still, it's kind of like, because, you know, to be fair, games, films, it's kind of like a way of escapism, right?
Yep.
And it's just like something that is physically in your world, and you can extend that feeling of escapism by, you know, like spending time with cosplayers or being a cosplayer especially. So yeah, I just, from then on, I just tried to figure out how to make this work, and the more I learned, the more, you know, more details I could do. Because yeah, I think my first cosplay was Wendy from Gravity Falls. I just wanted to start like something simple. I just wanted to start something that I wouldn't judge myself too hard. Because yeah, I tend to be really judgy about the stuff that I do.
It's a great line. It's perfect is the enemy of good enough, where you're
Yeah.
always like chasing perfect, and you're like, oh, this isn't good enough, and this isn't good enough. Whereas sometimes things are just it's fine.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
it's
I
good
wouldn't
enough.
I wouldn't say that that's a really, I wouldn't say that that's a bad thing, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do the Garrus costume. You know, and that's my pride. And again, like I'm really judgmental towards like anything I do, especially like art. And in Ukraine, I'm a student right now, so I study sculpture. And even the sculptures, it's like, you know, either it's perfect, or I just like, you know, I would just do it to, you know, cover everything that I have to do during the year, and I would just like present it and eat it.
Oh, and what's that like? What's it like studying sculpture?
Like I guess there are some problems towards like, you know, art education in Ukraine. So I feel like there are some parts I'm missing on. For example, like I've never tried the stone sculpture, stone carving, you know.
They use the big pneumatic drills now. It's like a air pressure thing. It's not a hammer and chisel anymore. It's like
It is hammer chisel as well.
Really?
Like you can use different instruments, you know. It's like it depends on your style. It depends what you're comfortable with. So for example, of course, right now it's easier, like in modern days, to use some power instruments to get like the general shape you want. But I think most of the artists still would go like for the hammer and chisel and start like, you know, chipping out bits and pieces.
I just can't imagine. Like I can't imagine the patience you need to look. Like what Michelangelo said. He was like, what did Michelangelo say? He said the sculpture was always in there. I was just helping to get it out, and to have that kind of like, oh, I can see it in the marble or in the stone, and then you just have a hammer and chisel, and you're just like.
For me, it's kind of intimidating because, again, like I do clay and plasticine sculpture most of all, you know. So yeah, for me, stone is kind of intimidating. I want to try it, but you know, there is no room for mistake really, because yeah, if you take out a little bit too much, there's no going back basically. So yeah, I would definitely like to try it out, but again, for a person who kind of is afraid of making mistakes, especially the ones you cannot fix later. Because, you know, again, when I'm doing the costume, I make a lot of mistakes, you know. But I just try to figure out the ways to kind of cover it up in the end. And it works out for me, you know. So, yeah.
And you enjoyed, obviously, how many years of it have you done?
I've done like 3 years by this point, but you know, like I kind of always like to sculpt a little bit. You know, it wasn't really my thing because previously I thought that maybe I'm gonna be like a graphic designer, and I actually went to Poland and I studied graphic design for 2.5 years. But I think at that point I kind of realized that, you know, like 2D art is not really my thing. Like I like art, but just in the other form. And it took me some time, I got back to Ukraine, took me some time to actually figure out what I want to do. And yeah, I just like to, you know, I just like stuff that you can kind of like rotate, like see from different angles, touch it maybe, you know, that's just my thing. Yeah, and I think cosplay translates really well into this because, again, like, it's really nice. And I also like people who put a lot of effort into making their costume very, like, you know, being able to see it from different angles as well. Because, you know, some people, they kind of just, like, put effort into the front of their costume.
And then the back's a bit of a hot mess.
Yeah. For example, again, like, I keep talking about Gary's costume, but again, I really put a lot of time and effort into making that thing.
Well, you sculpted the head and you sculpted the feet and the hands. And...
I didn't sculpt the feet. So the feet, they were basically made of like high heel shoes. Then I would just like take out the heel, you know, the thing. And then I would just add layers of acrylic plastic to make like it's very weird. It was like kind of like an experiment. I didn't really know what I was doing at that point. But yeah, in the end it worked out, you know. Like the one thing I really like, I sculpted the sole, like the lower piece of the shoe. How do you call that?
The sole.
The sole?
Yeah.
So yeah, I sculpted the sole basically, because it was like previously it was flat. So, you know, I kind of tried out walking in that thing, and you know, as soon as there was like some little stone or whatever, I had big problems with keeping my balance. But yeah, I figured it out, and I also figured out like the way to make the claws move as well. So, because I really wanted to make it feel like, you know, it's the actual foot, right? Yeah. Not like it's just like a prop or whatever. So I actually figured out because he has these like 2 claws basically, and I made them the way so if like I tilt, those claws tilt as well. So it actually looks like, you know, it's those are real feet, you know.
It gives it a really like realistic perspective. So it doesn't just look like someone cobbled it together. It looks like it's walking straight from the video game.
Yeah. Like, that's the feeling I aim towards in my cosplay. Like, I really want people to look at it and be like, oh, that's like, that's real life, bro. Yeah. Like, you know, that's not just someone cosplaying something. That's like the character, you know? And that's like my goal for all my costumes. And again, I kind of feel like I have to say that not all cosplayers have to do the same thing, because it's just something that brings me joy when, you know, I see people reacting this way. And I got some comments from people saying like, oh, I thought like under the photos, you know, I thought it's a screenshot, right? So that brings me joy because that's the thing I wanted to make, you know.
To confuse people, to be like, look, this is actually realistic.
Yeah.
And do you want to do this for a career?
I thought about it, and you know, like I would love to, but there are a lot of buts. And not, but you know. Yeah, like you have to consider a lot of stuff, and I feel like, you know, it's easier to do somewhere. For example, if I were in the US, I think it would be easier to get into that kind of like group of people who actually do this as their job. Mm-hmm. Whereas, for example, in Ukraine, you wouldn't be able to do that, you know, because we just don't have any opportunities for that. We don't have, you know, we don't do films that much. We started doing them more often recently, but it's still not like Hollywood, you know, nothing like what they do in the US and some European countries. So, like, I'm considering, you know, different possibilities. I just don't know right now, you know. But yeah, that would definitely be very lovely. Like I considered doing like costumes. I considered doing like the makeup, like SFX stuff.
Yeah.
Because again, I really like making those like masks, and I have this handsome Jack mask, which the one I have photo of, it's not that good for my standards, for my current standards, but it was actually pretty good, and a lot of people liked it. And again, it's about like bringing this specific character or concept or like whatever you want to life, so people would be like, oh, that's cool, that's cute, like whatever. Yeah, and another thing I was also considering is maybe like making figurines, because I'm trying to get into 3D right now, and
You sent me your baby Krogan.
yeah.
Last night I just got this picture of like a baby Krogan in 3D, and I was just like, why are people sending me baby Krogans? And I was like, I get I'm into Mass Effect, but I'm not baby
fair.
Krogan. It's like, look at my baby Krogan. And I was just like, oh my God.
Look,
so what are you working on with that?
It's much better than showing just pictures of actual babies. Baby Krogan is at least like, it's Krogan, you know?
If you sent me a picture of a baby, that'd be even more concerning. It's probably less concerning that I got a baby Krogan. It's like, it's just Olga. She's into that kind of thing.
It's just weird. Whatever.
But I wonder what was going through your head where you're like, Nathan will like this.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, that's Team Emerald cosplay spot.
Oh yeah, should they have their it's baby, what do they call it? Baby
Grogus, yeah.
Baby Grogus. We'll throw up a picture of it. It's actually like, mwah. Jay built this thing at home.
It's hilarious
and
as
it's
well.
so good. It's covered in latex. Like,
Yeah.
he's put a huge amount of work into it.
Yeah, like that actually inspired me because I also like making props. So for example, like for the photo shoot of Gareth's costume, which didn't happen because of, obvious reasons.
Don't speak about the war.
Because of the war.
We'll get into that later.
Okay. But yeah, basically for my photo shoot, I made some stuff. I made like a tablet they would use in second Mass Effect. I made some bottles with the lighting inside, the ones that you can see in the bar in the game, because I just feel that it makes it more immersive,
No, I get that.
And again, like you can get a really cool photos, especially if you find a right studio to make them. But if you have actual props, that would be so much better. You would believe in this photo so much more. And again, that's what I'm aiming for. And I started doing more of this stuff lately. So yeah, with Baby Krogan. Because the thing is, I was actually planning to do a photo shoot with another girl who made a female shepherd costume.
That'd be amazing.
So yeah, it's gonna be a romantic photo shoot, of course. But
that could go terribly wrong because you guarantee that's going to end up somewhere and people are going to be like, yeah.
Look, they were like this. Like I have this photo with the same girl. She didn't have shepherd costume on Comic Con Ukraine, but she had like a Mandalorian, armor on her. So basically, that's when we got the idea of making a photo shoot together. But yeah, and she also she kind of looks like shepherd, like female shepherd, the standard one. So we made this photo when she like kisses me on the cheek, and everybody liked this photo so much. I think it's like my most popular photo on my Instagram. And like I commented in style, like how Garrus would say something like about the armor, and everybody liked this. And again, I just wanted to expand on this because she's a nice girl and she's got a pretty nice armor as well right now. So yeah, and I just thought maybe like, because in the game you have this dialogue near the end battle, and they start talking about kids, and they joke about, there are gonna be a lot of baby Krogans after this war is over.
Yeah. Spoilers.
So I'm like, baby Krogan, that's the thing.
There's going to be someone listening to this and they're going to be like, spoilers, guys, spoilers.
Talking about babies is not that big of a spoiler, If you're in a relationship with someone, you would rather not always, but you would rather hit this point where you're like, okay, so what about the baby?
It's outside my calibrations. So, you've been in Ireland now as a refugee for the last couple of months. And you were recently at Dublin.
Almost 5
Almost 5
Almost
months.
5.
Jeez, it seems a long time.
Right.
And you were recently at Dublin Comic Con. They
Yeah.
invited you to be a guest judge. You had a little stand there. So
Yeah.
tell us how you found Dublin Comic Con, because I barely saw you when I was there. I was running this way. Me and Vicky were shooting footage, and I was walking around as my tech
Totally
priest.
understandable. I was running around as well.
I think that's 90% of Comic Con is people just being like, I'm so busy. And then by the end of it, you just spent a week kind of recovering and just going, it's so calm.
Yes, I really needed that rest afterwards. Like, I was so tired and exhausted, but it was fun, It was a very interesting experience and not something I'm used to, because previously I would just go to Comic Cons as a cosplayer, right? But now I was actually a guest, and I was actually a cosplay competition judge. So that was kind of intimidating, but fun. But yeah, like, it's a long story how I got to Dublin Comic Con. Basically, I just started with, I wanted to buy some materials that I couldn't access back in Ukraine. And I thought like, oh, okay, I just can buy some of the stuff I really wanted to buy for a long time now, and I will just bring it with me. And that's when that's when I found out about Arachnid Effects. And I met Carl, and, from that point on, it kind of like, yeah, I kind of got into this creative community of Ireland. So I found out about TOG, the makerspace we're currently in right now. I started meeting other cosplayers as well, like mostly on social media, but still. Yeah, and at some point, I figured there was this thing going on with Ukrainian cosplayers, the ones that were able to leave or already were in the other countries before the war started. They would go to Comic Cons and organize booths to, make people more aware about the stuff going on, and especially from the cosplayer's perspective, because, again, it's one thing when you just hear the news that, oh, it's happening, and you just don't really understand the extent of it. But it's the other thing when there are actual people who are telling their stories, and that's the point of it. That's the point of what the other cosplayers did and what I wanted to do. I wanted to raise some awareness towards what's going on, and like, a small fundraiser would do pretty good as well. So yeah, that's how I got the idea. And I think that Carl and Jerry, the organizers of Dublin Comic Con...
Big shout out to Jerry, by the way.
Big shout out.
Jerry, I've never seen someone so stressed in my entire life. They are an absolute machine. And
Yes.
they were just running around like... I don't know how they got through absolutely everything. They were just like...
Yeah, I feel like I was stressed, but I feel like they were stressed so much more.
Like, visible, like,
Yeah.
crow's feet just coming in as I watch them.
Yeah, the eye tipping a little bit.
Oh, they're great, though. I'm always a big fan of Jerry. They always kind of brighten up my day every time I see them.
Yeah, that's like a great thing. Big shout out, and I'm really grateful that I got to be part of this as well. Because, again, like, it's not like I expected some special treatment, that, like, oh, I'm a Ukrainian cosplayer. No, it was a surprise for me, and kind of like a good surprise, and I'm grateful that I got this experience right now. Probably, maybe next year, maybe when the war is over, I will be able to come here with the costume. That would be nice.
Did you feel a bit naked at Dublin Comic Con without a costume? Because I saw you, and to be fair, an awful lot of people commented and said it to me when I put your picture up. They were like, you had the best costume, because if people don't know, Olga was wrapped in a Ukrainian flag all weekend. And an awful lot of people commented on it.
I just cosplayed the flagpole.
It's a great TikTok video on that. I'm a flagpole. But did you feel very naked, though?
Yeah, because, again, I'm just used to going to the conventions in a costume, and if I don't have a costume, I would rather not go.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like, again, I just like the feeling when I'm in this costume and I get to meet other people and we get to talk about, like, what we like, and other people get excited for how we look, and they want to take pictures with us. So, like, I feel it's very different experience from when you're just visiting con. And again, like, being a judge is completely different experience as well. But yeah, I'm just so used to being at this type of events as a cosplayer that especially being a judge, and we had two other amazing judges with me, and they wore costumes both days. So it was kind of like, yeah, I'm also cool, you know.
It's a shout out to Amazonian Cosplay and Cosplay Journal, isn't it?
Yes, both British cosplayers, Cosplay Journal, I believe they also like, you know, they actually talk about different cosplayers. So yeah, great people, great judges as well. I'm really lucky that they were like, you know, other judges alongside with me, because I was kind of lost a lot of the time.
Well, they've
Again,
judged before, haven't they?
yeah, because they actually have experience with this, so they could actually, you know, kind of like lead me through this. Because again, like it's one thing where you're just a cosplayer; it's the other thing when you have to judge other cosplayers. And on one hand, there's you're still part of this community. They're part of this community. You're just like for the prejudging, it was just like, you know, talking about, oh, how did you do this thing? How did you do this thing? Like the thing that I would actually talk about with other cosplayers anyways. But still, you know, there's this sense of importance, sense of like, you know, you kind of have to decide as well.
And like, did you find that kind of, I guess, to cross the Rubicon in a way between being in a costume, being judged, to not being in a costume and passing judgment? Passing judgment sounds a bit harsh, but you know, where you've got rows and rows of people going, and
Yeah.
you're not being asked to tell people that they're great. You're being asked to be like, which one is better than the other. Like,
I try to make sure that people know that I appreciate any costumes on stage, and you know, like for the prejudging as well. Because again, they all did a great job, you know, and they put a lot of time and effort, and I believe that's something they wanted to do for a longer time, you know. Because again, I don't think that cosplayers do that for just for competition. Cosplayers do that for themselves because they like this character, they want to, you know, impersonate this character. So I try to make sure they know that I appreciate all their work. But yeah, definitely, as a judge, you still have to decide, because you know you still have to put someone on this like first, second, third place. So it's kind of hard, especially if you have a really good competition, and we did. We had a really great cosplayers, and it was really hard to decide, you know. But again, like I tried to be as fair as possible. And you know, it's also interesting because there are a lot of things you don't think of when you're a cosplayer attending the competition versus when you're actually judging the competition. And there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that you know, you just don't know as as person not inside of it. So I kind of understand a bit more about, you know, some decisions that were made on other conventions in Ukraine that I don't completely agree with. I still don't completely agree with some of those decisions, but
But it must be challenging though, because like I guess cosplay competitions are very, what's the best way of saying it? They're very subjective, because like one could do a perfect cosplay, like a perfect cosplay
Yeah.
of, let's say, a Doctor Who character.
Yeah.
And it's simple, but it's a perfect replication of
Yeah.
X. But it's also simple. Or you could cosplay as a 7-foot tall space marine, and you could do a half-assed job on it, but it would still be way more impressive than, arguably, to some people, a Doctor Who character. Now, that's not singling anyone out, but like for me, the bigger the better. Whereas I don't really have enough experience to say how hard embroidery work is for sewing.
Yeah.
So I can't really appreciate that. So you're always bringing your biases in on that.
like I feel like that's why you should have, as cosplay judges, you should have a person who really knows a lot of things about creating armor. You should have a person who really knows a lot of things about sewing, and you know, maybe someone somewhere in between. Because yeah, like I feel like that's a hard thing to do, but you have to get judges that would be able to actually like see costume from different angles. And again, like if, for example, for me during the prejudging, I could notice more like stuff about the details, about the crafting, about, you know, that kind of stuff. While other girls, Amazonian cosplay and cosplay journal, they know much more than me about sewing. So they would notice all like, little things about sewing that was done for the costume. So yeah, I think it's about balancing out the judges as well. But yeah, definitely there is this thing where even in Ukraine we had this problem where the girl won even though she had like it was Vi from League of Legends. So she had like this gauntlet. I like her as a character, and like I think the girl kind of tried to make a good costume, but she didn't have enough time to do that. So she ended up like the finishing was bad, let's say so. And basically, yeah, she won a prize just because she had like this huge gauntlet that she could like move fingers in, and that's a good stuff, that's impressive. But there were other people who actually put more time into finishing their costume so it would look like like the actual finished costume. And there was a lot of disagreement about this, and again I feel like the problem was that like most of the judges, they didn't really know a lot about crafting, so they just went for big cool thing, basically.
Yeah, like I only judged one competition, and that was in Tullamore Library.
Yeah.
Which is not a big convention, but I mean, fair props, they invited me out, and it was great. And we had a 8-year-old kid dressed as a Lego man, and it was the best. It's one of the best costumes I've ever seen, and he had like a big smiling face, and it was like, you win a prize, and we gave him his prize, and he was like, he didn't know what to do with himself, and he was just like so happy. And unfortunately his brother was standing there beside him, and his brother also had a costume, but I was just like, I'm a maker.
Yeah.
Obviously I love Lego, so my bias was just like, Lego kids getting the prize.
Yeah, and again, like, judges can know some characters better than they do the others, so probably if it's your like favorite or one of the favorite characters, you would be biased and you would be like inclined towards giving a prize or giving like some sort of place for that character. But judges are just people, just regular people. Yeah, like we're not robots. We're not like, we can judge, what we can basically based on what we know. So of course it's much harder if you, for example, if you have a few characters in front of you and you know a few of them, but others like you completely don't know where they're from, like what characters are they, what they do, like and of course it would be harder to judge those types of costumes because you're just not familiar with the character. You don't know what the character should look like. You might have some references, but so yeah, like it's hard. It's hard being cosplay judge in a lot of senses because you just want to be part of this community, right? But you still have to decide. You need to balance out the friendliness.
It's tough. It is tough because someone is gonna be annoyed at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But tell me, you are going back to Ukraine.
Yes.
In the next couple of weeks, and thank you so much for taking the time to get this in. We was kind of mad dash after doing Comic Con to get this through because we couldn't do it last time because I got COVID.
Then I got COVID.
Then you got COVID, and then everyone was crazy busy, but we finally managed to do that. So I guess a big question is, how have you found yourself coming from Ukraine to Ireland, and how's that whole experience been?
It's a mixed. There are lots of mixed feelings there, because on one hand, I'm gonna start with the good side of this,
Get right.
On one hand, it's kind of like a good opportunity for a lot of people, because first off, to get to Ireland before the war, you would need to get a visa. You would need to get save up some money for the trip and for living here, because the prices are like significantly higher here than they are in Ukraine. For example, like the public transport, if here you have to pay like €2, say.
That's gone down, by the way. It used to be like $3.50.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
For like one bus, not like for 90 minutes, for one bus.
That's terrible. Like in Ukraine, you would literally pay like €0.50.
That's for nothing. Like. Go on.
But like there's like the small things, and again, like previously, a lot of people didn't have any opportunity to come here, so I feel like that's again a good opportunity to a lot of people, especially the ones that came from the areas that got damaged badly. And again, like my motivation coming here was that I wanted to earn some money for myself, for my family, because back in Ukraine, I used to live in Bucha. Then we got back to Kiev when we evacuated. So, Bucha, it was a mess. Like for some time when I stayed in Kiev, it was still occupied by Russians. And in Kiev, you just couldn't find any job because everything was closed. Right now, a lot of like coffee shops, restaurants, shops, that kind of stuff, they start opening because, we kind of need to get our economy floating a little bit. So yeah, now it's kind of better. But at that point, there was no work available. And you still have to, eat something. So my motivation here was to, come here, look for a job and, maybe bring some money with me back to Ukraine when I'm gonna go back home. So yeah, like, and it's hard to, again, Ireland is a really nice, lovely country. I did a tour around Ireland, so I kind of like saw, everything a little bit. But it's hard to appreciate it in full while you have this background, and it's kind of pressuring on you. So.
And Bucha is still being heavily damaged in the war. Like it's.
Yeah, I'm not sure like if they're gonna repair it soon, but basically there was this like supermarket right under like right in next building next to my home, and it got destroyed badly, like really badly. And like I constantly think about this sometimes that like I start remembering how I would go there, to get some food for my cat, to grab a coffee in a coffee shop that was there like near the supermarket. And I just know that I wouldn't be able to do that right now. It's just something that's gone from my life. And it's just like those small bits that used to define your normal life, and you just cannot have them anymore. And I think that's the hardest part. Like, of course, there are other things that, like, a lot of loss, a lot of grief for a lot of different people. Some people, like, I'm really lucky because at some point, I thought my apartment's gonna burn down because the neighboring one was hit by a tank. The actual tank shot the neighboring apartment while I was inside mine. And the fire started, and I thought that probably my apartment's gonna burn down along with the other one. I got so lucky. My apartment's still standing. I just got like one window. It's got like it was damaged by some shots. So but that's nothing compared to what other people have lost. And yeah, but I feel like losing this ability to come back to your normal life, it's one of the hardest things, because again, even like loss, it's something that you deal with over time. And usually in case of like regular loss, like regular grief, you get over it with the help of something normal in your life, something that keeps you grounded. But when you don't have the thing that keeps you grounded, that's when you have problems. So yeah, again, like, and I feel like that's the thing that is bothering a lot of other Ukrainians as well. And you kind of like, you still kind of try to build this same thing here, but it's not the same,
No, I don't think anyone can really empathize with you in that way to fully understand kind of everything, because obviously your boyfriend, your family, they're all still back there.
Yeah.
And that must have been, I mean, you're 5 months away from them, and it's...
Yeah, that's the really hard part as well, because basically like you don't have a person to lean on when you need to. And again, like, I just know that I have to be here. Like, I had to be here for the last like 5 months, because that would actually help my family. And in cases like this, in cases like war, it's not about what you want, it's about what you have to do to to help someone who needs it, to help your family, to help other people, your friends. Yeah, and like you start being very selfless. Like, not all the people, but a lot of people that I know, they became very selfless because your perspective changes. And especially if you've been like through through some tough stuff, and I have, you know.
And you showed us some pictures. Hopefully, we'll throw one up on the screen, but of these cosplayers, these amazing cosplayers who you would know from Ukrainian Comic Con,
Yeah.
and then juxtaposed with a picture of them in military uniforms.
Yeah.
And like that to me is just like, I don't know, like we look at and we talk about like play guns and 3D printers and
Yeah.
laser guns and stuff like that, and it's play and all the rest of it, and then people are thrown into,
Yeah, and then it becomes real.
yeah, you're handed a gun, like.
And you have to wear another costume, but this time it's not like an option. It's not like you're doing this for fun. It's because you have to protect your close ones. You have to protect your country. And I'm really worried for those guys because, again, like those people are my friends. You know, I've known them for a longer time. And again, there are a lot of aspects to this that you wouldn't be thinking of when you just when you just hear the news, right? But as a person in this situation, there's so much going on. And again, like for example, I have a lot of stories of cosplayers that I showed on my booth on Dublin Comic Con. And basically, like there's just stories of how those people's life changed after the war started. And, you know, some of them are worse, some of them are, you know, relatively fine comparing to the others. But all of them have this, they had to leave their home, they had to move somewhere, they had to evacuate, you know. Yeah, and that's just, especially when you have this like collection of these stories, and it's not like, you know, this one people who kind of is a victim, right? It's just a lot of these people, and they're real people. They're my friends, you know. They're people who used to go to Comic Cons, who could attend Dublin Comic Con as well, but they cannot right now. And that puts it all into perspective because, you know, like there's this big story like about the war, but it consists of so many like small stories of all these individuals. And yeah, that's I feel like that's something you don't really think about. And especially like even me, you know, when I was in Bucha, you don't realize how bad it is unless you can actually talk to people who are survivors, or unless you get into this situation yourself, you know.
Yeah, like you obviously fled from there, and I can't imagine the level of kind of the trauma involved in that. I think that word is thrown around an awful lot these days. But like,
I had a small PTSD when I came here. Like it wasn't too severe. I have rather strong mental health, so. But yeah, I had this thing when, you know, like I would just freak out. Any like sudden loud sound, it would freak me out so much. And I had like small kind of like paranoia as well going on. You know, and I feel like, again, I got so lucky because I wasn't hit too hard by all these things. I know some of my friends, they got much worse of it, you know. Yeah, and I'm kind of happy because, again, I'm happy that I was in that situation in Bucha rather than some of my friends, because I know that some of them wouldn't be able to handle it, you know?
Yeah. I guess that this kind of war doesn't really take account of people. It just, it's indiscriminate, unfortunately.
Yeah, and at some point it just becomes numbers, you know? Because when the war started, like we would constantly like monitor what's going on, like, you know, the count of casualties and that kind of stuff. But now it's been like half a year since the war started. And again, it just becomes like, you know, the number. You stop thinking about the individuals, even like Ukrainians, because it's just too overwhelming. You can handle only so much stress. You can handle only so much, you know, of that empathy towards other people. And it's really tiring, you know, so like a lot of people I know, they're so tired, like they're apathetic, they kind of start getting depressed because, you know, you just don't get a break from this. You just don't have time to recover.
Did you feel like the Irish cosplay community were kind of there, or do you think people probably don't really understand?
Like people in Ireland try their best to support me, to support other Ukrainians, and I'm very grateful for that. But again, it's like, it's not something you can understand unless you've been through anything similar. So, you know, like you can offer support, but there's just some things that, again, the way that perspective changes, the way you're thinking changes, right? And like, again, you just wouldn't be able to get it otherwise. And that's fine. Like, it's not like, it's not like I'm saying, oh, you're not doing enough. No, you're doing, like, if you support Ukraine in any smallest way possible, that's enough. That's good enough. Like, the more support you can offer, the better, because that means that the war is going to be over sooner. But again, and a lot of people have this, like, basically, I don't know how you say it in your language, but it's like safety guilt. Like,
Survivor's guilt.
Survivor's guilt, yeah. Like, so...
you got out and others didn't.
Yeah, or again, you're just being in safety while other people or you even don't know, they're currently in danger, and, anything can happen to them anytime. And that's the thing a lot of Ukrainians deal with as well. And I feel like any Ukrainian deal with that, like any given Ukrainian is dealing with this thing right now, because even if you were in a war zone, there are still people who probably got it worse. There are still people who actually, like, lost parts of their families, lost their homes. So, but that's not like a helpful thing as well, because that just makes you upset, really. Like, I've never seen any person that would actually be motivated by it. It would just, put you down. So, yeah, I feel like the thing I should mention, like, don't feel guilty, don't feel, like, upset that you cannot do more. Do whatever you can. That's fine. That's perfectly enough. Yeah, I think that's it.
You still have your Garrus cosplay. You probably haven't worn it in quite a while. You're super proud of it. Will we be able to, war permitting, see more costumes from you in the future? Do you have plans for anything big?
Oh, I have so much plans. Like, I actually have a lot of plans for, like, paired cosplays with a lot of my friends. And so, okay, the one that I'm going to talk about, I actually have this friend back in Ukraine, and we were talking about this before war. We wanted to make Vi and Jinx cosplay from the Arcane show.
Amazing.
And I would actually do the gauntlets, and she will do, like, the guns, that type of stuff. So this is the one I'm really excited for, and I actually started going to the gym to gain some muscles as well. Oh yeah, strong lady. Yeah, and we would fit perfectly, because again, I just want to mention this again, that I have certain standards towards how I want to look like in a cosplay. And other people don't have to match my standards. If you have different standards, that's perfectly fine, that's perfectly valid. And if you just want to make, like, a cosplay because you like the character, because you like the costume, just do it. Like, nothing and nobody's gonna stop you. So yeah, when I'm talking about my standards, it's just my standards. Nobody has to, try to do the same thing. But yeah, for me, it's kind of like an important part, being, as accurate as possible. Yeah. So again, for Gary's costume, I would do, like, pads for my shoulders. I would do, like, pads for my hips to look more alien-ish, So yeah, that's why I want to get some muscles for Vi. And I really like that this other girl, she's smaller than me. She's like compared to me, like, this tall, and she's skinny. So we're gonna fit perfectly. Like, that's just something I really like about cosplay. If you're able to find people who fit perfectly, that's just, like, another point for me.
I guess there's so many different ways of doing cosplay that I found, because you've got, like, I'd say we can make 1,000 categories, but I'd say if I was making a set of categories, you've got your buyers. People who just buy generic cosplays. Yeah. They go to a con, they have a great time, and they don't think too deeply about it. And that's completely valid.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you have the made something, threw it together, a closet cosplay, and they went and they had a great time. And then you have,
hardcore crafters.
Well, I think you've got a couple more levels, because then you've got, like, they bought some foam. And they've done something, and they put something together, and they're only really kind of finding their feet. And then you've kind of got your amateur kind of cosplayers who are just kind of, they're into it, they're really into it, and they're kind of getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
And then you probably have the group, not you know, maybe the hierarchy probably go down a bit, people who buy super expensive ones and like, you know, either custom made rigs or, you know, buy it from prop shops and stuff, and they go in that. And then you've got, over all of that, then you've got, you know, people who are spending 6 months building a costume and they're just super into it, and, like 3 years, and like they're just super, like, I know my tech priest took me between 6 months to a year, and then that sat in this workshop for 2 years unused. And anytime I get a chance to kind of whip out and play with it, I have great fun. And then you kind of got that, and then even in that you can break it down. Whereas like when you're saying you want to perfectly replicate something, I don't get that at all, because I am not into I'm always into kind of look at something, get a bunch of ideas, and then kind of run with it. But I can really appreciate though that there's so many different ways of doing it.
There are also like this category, for example, there are people who make, basically they make the certain character, but they make a new design for them. So like, for example, like, you know, they add some details. For example, they throw in like embroidery that wasn't originally there, right? Or they throw in other details, or they change the style of the appearance of this character. And that's totally valid as well, because I've seen a lot of people do very impressive stuff with that.
Like for gender bends and all that kind of stuff.
That as well. Like, for example, like I've seen, we actually were planning with other girls to make this photo shooting of, basically we wanted to make Sailor Moon characters, but not the original, like, you know, those small dresses, whatever. We wanted to make like really nice fancy dresses for them. So
that'd be cool.
Yeah, so you would actually like see and kind of could recognize the character, but you know, it's not the original appearance of the character. And I did that, for example, with other girls. We did like badass Disney princesses, and I was the Snow White. But again, it's not like a classical look. It's like, you know, punk, whatever.
Like we'll throw the picture up because it's a great picture. That photographer was obviously having the best time ever.
Yeah, and like again, it's just about fun as well. Because for example, with this, like, you know, Snow White, it wasn't my plan to make an accurate costume of this character. I just wanted to make to have fun with this character, and again with the photography, you know, how the costume would be highlighted, how my appearance would be highlighted. So I feel like that's just fun. Like, and again, it's cosplay as well. It's totally valid. Like, and that's the one that I didn't have to judge myself too hard with, because again, like, I'm not making this character as lifelike as possible. I'm just having fun with it. That's it. And you know, there are a lot of sexy cosplays as well, you know.
I always think this, and like, I kind of get flack on this one, and I think it's actually an interesting topic to discuss.
Yeah.
Because if you go on Reddit,
yeah,
you know, people are going to be like, oh god, this guy's on Reddit. But if you go on Reddit, like half the cosplays you see, you're kind of like, yeah, but if
ladies.
Yeah, and you're thinking, like, if I click in on that, am I going to end up on OnlyFans? And then, like, 90% of the time, you're like, oh, yeah, damn it. Well, how did I end up here? And then, like, other times, you're kind of like, is that a different part of the community? Or is it, like, should that be the exact same, and am I gatekeeping? And, like, I often kind of find myself, in a way, I don't ever like to be a gatekeeper, but I'm wondering, is there a degree of over-sexualization in some cosplays where you're kind of just like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, you know, is that a bit far, or am I being a prude?
Is it safe for workplace?
yeah, but that's it. But then I'm always kind of catching myself going, am I being a prude by saying that?
You know, I feel like there is kind of a problem with cosplay community in general, not just like Ukrainian or Irish. I feel like that cosplay community needs some separation regarding the style of the costume and the way you're making this costume or this character. Because yeah, it's just confusing when, you know, there are people competing, for example, right? And there are people who make this, you know, hardcore costumes. Then there are people who buy these costumes. Then there are people who, you know, just try to make it work the way they can. And then there are people who, again, like, they just do sexualized costumes. And people who do, you know, some design, custom design costumes for different characters, and it's just confusing because how can you compare? Like, how can you compare all those different categories? It's just different things. It's all cosplay, but you know, it's like in horse riding. You wouldn't be judging jumping and like race like at the same time, right? Those are just different categories. And I feel like that's what cosplay lacks.
Sorry, I'm just imagining a sexy cosplay competition, and I'm like, I don't think a big Comic Con can get away with that.
I think actually some Comic Cons did that. They actually made like competition, like separate competition specifically for like, you know, sexualized cosplay. And of course, I feel like there should be some limits. You know, you cannot just go on the con and show everything.
Yeah, because I know I was chatting to someone at a big convention, and they were basically saying is that someone had to get stopped at the door because they turned up in a thong, and they were like, it's part of the character, and the con was kind of like, this is a family friendly event, like you know, like there has to be a level of kind of like, you know, it's either all go, you know, and like what you say to that point, and like when they said that to me, I was kind of like, my mind was like, no, I don't think I could be, I don't think I could jump on board with that. But like, I guess there's probably like,
I feel like separation would actually help because again, you know, people would not feel injustice in cosplay competition because again, if you go there with like a self-made, like rather, you know, not too complicated costume, and you don't have that, like you don't have years of experience, you just like started cosplay like this year, last year, right? And you just feel like you have no chances against those other people. And I know because I felt the same way when I made this elf costume from Dragon Age. It was decent, you know, like it wasn't too complicated, but it was fine enough for me then. And I went for the competition, and I didn't expect anything basically. But you know, you still get that feeling that, why am I here? Like I've got no chances. Look at that dude in like, you know, full armor, or like the guy that's got like a lot of sewing done with embroidery and that kind of stuff. And you just get upset because you know that you have no chances, and you start feeling like it's not possible to catch up with those people. Because, you know, like you can progress, but they're going to progress as well, right? And well, at least I feel like I got that feeling, and I think that
there's a law of diminishing returns though at some point.
Yeah. So I feel like actually like separating into like, you know, like amateur cosplayers, pro cosplayers, custom design cosplayers, like sexy cosplay, whatever, that would actually help community a lot because people would stop being so harsh on themselves. And again, like it would just be much easier to judge those costumes too. Like I know it's not possible, for example, for smaller ones, because if you have like only so many cosplayers, right, it would be hard to separate them. But for larger events, I feel like that would be a great idea, and I hope that maybe sometime in the future cosplayers would kind of do something like that, because I feel like that would be so beneficial to cosplay community, you know, all over the world.
Is there anything last you'd like to say to our audience before we wrap up?
Keep dreaming, keep believing in yourself. But yeah, basically, if anyone just starts cosplay, just do whatever you can. You don't have to try to best the best of the cosplayers. You just have to, like, you're just having fun. I was just having fun with my first costumes, and, you know, nobody's gonna stop you, and nobody's gonna say, oh, like, there are some mean people always. It's not about, like, you know, that generally cosplay community is mean or whatever. There are some people that are gonna try to put you down for not having a perfect costume or not looking like the character you want to portray because, oh, like, you have like another skin color, you have, you know, you're not in the same weight category, for example. That's not a valid point. That's just people being mean again. So again, do whatever you want, and if you want to make some specific character, like, and, you know, do the best you can, okay, you can do it, but just don't push yourself too hard. The reason why it took me 3 years to make Gary's costume was because I wanted to make this character, and I just kept like trying and trying and trying, and I tried so many different techniques, and again, I didn't have this point where I was like, okay, it's taking me too long, I should give up. if you really want to, you don't have to give up, but you don't have to push yourself as well. So you have to find this balance where you still have fun and maybe you can achieve your goals too.
Well said. Well, Olga, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. What you talked about was a bit heavy, but it was great, and it was really interesting to get like someone else's perspective. And listen, you're always welcome back here in Ireland, and you're always welcome on the Irish Maker podcast.
Thank you. And also, I would like to say, please support Ukraine. Please support Ukraine however you can. If you can, like, donate even like the cup of coffee, the same amount of money that you would use to like buy a cup of coffee, just donate towards any Ukrainian effort. And there are some actually good Ukrainian efforts, like fundraising organizations back in Ukraine. And if you're donating towards organizations in Ukraine, you know that's the fastest way to get that money to be used towards, like, you know, goals, towards like helping people, towards getting supplies. So I would really appreciate that. I think other cosplayers would really appreciate that, because a lot of them are volunteers right now, and that's just great stuff. Just if you can, keep helping.
Perfect. Well, on that note, let's call it. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Olga. Thank you so much to our listeners. We've had an absolutely brilliant chat, and we'll catch you on the next one. Guys, keep making. This has been the Irish Maker podcast. I've been your host, Nathan Wheeler. This episode was engineered and mixed by Vicky Toomey Lee. Thank you to our sponsor, Coding Grace. Music provided by Gertie Beats. Follow the Irish Maker podcast on social media at the Irish Maker podcast. And if you're a maker or you know a maker who should be on this podcast, then send us an email at irishmakerpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.